I'm pretty sure it was 2015. I was doing quite a lot of traveling, and one of the places I had to visit was Oslo in Norway. I had never been to Norway, but there was a gentleman I knew who was living in Oslo. Now, when I say I knew this person, I had met this person maybe twice. I think I'd met them at GDC, and my wife and I had spoken to them over lunch once. So, we'd spent maybe an hour and a half in their company. They heard that I was coming to Oslo, and they reached out and said, contact me when you're going to get here, and I'll show you around. This gentleman's name was Jory Prum. He had worked in the audio industry for many years, and he was from America, but he had decided that he wanted to, he was going through the process of moving to Norway. So I check in, I catch up with him, we have a very brief conversation in his studio, he just shows me his studio, and then we proceed to go out for the day. Jory takes me to a very well-known park in Norway, and this park is essentially a large public space that is completely strewn with these huge range of statues. These statues have all been made by one particular sculptor who is a famous Norwegian artist, sculptor. The sculpture was incredible, and I spent a lot of time taking photos of the sculptor with a little camera and looking at them, whilst Jory and I were wandering around and we were chatting. Now, what was interesting is I'm sure Jory has visited this park before. I'm sure he's seen these statues before, but he was incredibly patiently just standing and waiting and allowing me to enjoy looking at the sculpture. In fact, I suspect he was probably getting enjoyment out of looking at my reactions to this sculpture. And we spoke about everything. We spoke about, finding girlfriends and finding work and living in America versus living in Europe and the types of jobs we'd had. I mean, essentially, we got to know each other incredibly in that hour or so that we spent looking at the sculptures. And then we continued to wander around the park because it was just coming out of winter in Oslo. And so there was ice everywhere. And of course, I had my recording device on me. And because there was thin ice, we literally stood for 30, 40, 50 minutes stepping on this ice, stepping on these sheets of ice and on the crunchy ice, grinding ice under our feet and recording ice cracking sounds. Again, we were having a chat while we were doing this. The feeling that I had was that I was speaking with somebody who I had known for most of my life. There was a familiarity there. There was a friendship there. There was a camaraderie there because we both worked in the same industry. We then got on this train, and by this stage the day was getting on. We got on this train that was going to take us up the mountain, and I was surprised to see a man in a business suit with skis over his shoulder. And I'm like, what's all that about? And Jory explained to me that this trip up the mountain was going to take us no more than 20 minutes, and this was from the centre of Oslo, and that people would literally take their skis to work, jump on the train at the end of the day, zip up to the top of the mountain and ski down the mountain just to have the opportunity to go skiing. They'd get in one ski run for the day on their way home from work. I mean, this delighted me to no end. We get to the top of the mountain, and there is the cliched log cabin. I will say Swiss mountain cabin because that's kind of what it looked like in my mind. And we sat inside and basically helped ourselves to the bistro of the giant urn of really, really tasty soup and the slabs of freshly baked bread. And it was, again, the cliched perfect meal, a wholesome freshly made meal. We then decided that we would walk down the mountain because it actually wasn't that far, and there was something else that Jory wanted to show me. And on the way down the mountain, we saw what I thought was a small church. And he explained to me that it was actually a mausoleum. And it was the mausoleum for the brother of the famous sculptor. Apparently the brother was somewhat envious of his brother's fame and decided he would make his own mausoleum to honor himself. And so there was this building where the inside is a curved space, and he has painted the entire interior surface. Now, the guy was actually a pretty good artist. From all accounts, he's a bit strange, but he was a pretty good artist. The interesting thing is you go in, you pay your ticket, and the actual entry to the mausoleum is a very low, small door. And to preserve the paintings inside, there is almost no light. So you go into this space where there's very, very, very dim light. So it is essentially almost dark. But because of the curved shape in there, it also has some of the most incredible reverb in any space. It's not that big a space, but because it's all curved, almost like an igloo inside, any sound bounces off the stone walls and echoes for quite some time. So I was very interested in the visual appearance of the place, but Jory had told me to make sure that I turned on my recording device when I went in there. And after I'd been in there for a little while, I heard this sort of scrape sound that echoed around this space. And then I heard it again. And then a few more times. And then I realized there was some seats in the middle where you could just sit and look at the beautiful paintings. But Jory was standing next to the seat, every now and again just moving it slightly so that it would creak and bounce the sound off all the walls. There were other people in there, and I'm not sure what they made of it. It was completely harmless. But again, Jory was making sure that I didn't miss out on this experience. It was something that he had experienced, that he wanted to share with me, and he knew that as a sound designer and recordist, I would love this. And so we spent far more time there than any rational person would, because it was just a wonderful part of the adventure. It's incredibly important that who and what Jory was is remembered, because it wasn't long after that trip that Jory was killed in a car accident. We lost one of the nicest people, one of the most considerate people that we have on this planet. And it was only afterwards, when I met his parents and I met other people who knew him, that I found that one perfect day that I experienced is something that Jory had inflicted on many, many people. He made a habit and a hobby out of just being amazing towards people, being incredibly supportive to people he barely knew, being incredibly lovely to people he hardly ever met. I want to use this as an example of the impact that we can have on other people. I will remember Jory's kindness for my entire life. I share good experiences with other people. I pass on and share knowledge and ideas with other people. I try to be a tiny bit as good as what Jory was every single day. But also the fact of how impactful the experience of a single day can be. There were so many things I learned in that day. And I think we spend too long in our studios, in our workplaces, in our homes, that we don't get out and have adventures. Jory crammed more into his short life than a group of many people put together would manage in their entire lives. He saw life as a challenge, and he basically said, hold my beer, challenge accepted. So yeah, I mean, thank you, Jory, for one perfect day.